Bob Gasser. I'm here to introduce Lisa Davis to our folks on the call. Lisa is actually the executive sponsor of Revature at Blue California. We very much appreciate that. And she has agreed to join us this evening or afternoon if you're on the West Coast. To talk about women in technology and some of her individual experiences. She has I wouldn't say I'm not going to say long, Lisa. I'm going to say a storied career in technology. So she is the Senior Vice President and Chief Information Officer of Blue California. She served as Vice President and General Manager of Digital Transformation for Intel. Prior to Intel, Lisa was the CIO at Georgetown University, my alma mater. And she served, she had a 26-year career in the federal government, where she had senior executive roles as the CIO of the U.S. Marshal Service, in the U.S. Department of Justice, as well as the CIO of counterintelligence field activity in the U.S. Department of Defense. So an amazing career. And I'm really excited to welcome you, Lisa, to our call here, our webinar at Revature. And this session will be hosted by Carol Baxter, who I think everyone knows, who's the Chief Human Resource Officer at Revature. And without further ado, I'll let you guys take it away.
Thank you, Bob. Happy to be here.
Wonderful. Well, Lisa, thank you so much for being here. I am so thrilled to be meeting you and to host you today. Your background is phenomenal and just has so much overlap, to our tech talent. So we're super excited to have you. I was just looking at the attendees today and I'm super excited. We've got a great list of people, and both men and women, which is great to have a good diverse crowd here. And I just want to thank everybody for taking their time out of the day to be here. So I see you are, I'm hosting you from my office, my actual work office.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So we've started to bring a couple people back. Our corporate office, we've done this kind of hybrid thing where I'm lucky enough to be close enough to the office so I can come in when I need to and then work from home if needed. So how is Blue Shield, how are you responding to the COVID and the work from home? How is that working for your company?
Yeah, we're still in a work from home status. Certainly in California, it continues to be, as we navigate through the pandemic, it continues to evolve. Right now, we're scheduled to come back into the office at the top of the new year, so January 22, but we are looking to kick off some pilots in some of our locations. So we've had it's so funny when we say back to work, because we've been working harder than we've ever been working. So it's really a back to office strategy. In terms of bringing some of our employees back, and then some of our executive engagements, I'm finally meeting a couple people in person. So I started at Blue Shield of California 2 weeks before we went into quarantine.
So there have been a lot of people that have started that you've met virtually that you've never, shaken a hand with, proverbially. So that's great. That'll be fun to meet everybody. Wonderful. Well, good stuff. We've experienced that too, as people are starting to come back a little bit of a time. It's nice to see the whole person and get to meet one another and start to kind of bring that stuff back. So that's good. So that being said, we'd like to jump right into the matter at hand. So we're interested in focusing on women in tech and some of the experiences that you've had, and interested in hearing your background there. So I think one of the things we wanted to talk about was just at a very high level, it's a great time to be a woman in tech. There are so many positions available in technology, and companies are really focusing on building diverse teams and an acute focus, not only on diversity, but more women in tech. And so it's just a wonderful time to be a woman in tech. The challenge that we see, and many employers are seeing, is despite this enormous opportunity, we're not able to really move that needle and get more women to come into technology. So the big question is why? What are the barriers and challenges that women are facing uniquely? And then, in your experience, what type of advice can you recommend for women to embrace to overcome some of those challenges?
Yeah, Carol, that's a big question. So let's break it apart. First of all, I would say it's a great time to be in tech, period. right? Digital transformation, technology, certainly in healthcare, one of the lessons from the pandemic, and certainly one of the reasons that I moved into the healthcare industry was because we know healthcare needs to be moved into the digital age. And I think we all understand, and the pandemic showed that even more, the need for data sharing, data interoperability, the need for digital capabilities to not only improve the experience that we all have as customers that we provide to our members and our providers, but to also improve health outcomes and ultimately make healthcare much more affordable. And that's certainly the mission at Blue Shield of California. So you're right, the market it's a crazy market right now. A lot of lessons of people, self-reflection coming through the pandemic and seeing the light at the end of the tunnel on the other end of what's most important to you. What are you most passionate about? And where do you want to spend your time in having an impact? And certainly those were questions that I thought about deeply prior to making the move, out of high tech into healthcare and wanting to be in a role where I could have impact and make an impact on changing, which I think we probably can all agree on, a healthcare system that needs to be changed. So that's number one. So if you're in technology, you're in the right field. And there's lots of opportunities. And we ourselves at Blue Shield of California are hiring lots of people. So make sure you're checking those out. I had to put in that personal plug. Second of all, as you talk about diversity, absolutely, it's not just women, but it's certainly women is one of the populations, as well as our Latino and Black population, that the numbers are not improving. The numbers keep dwindling, and it's an area that we have to continue to build a pipeline in. And there's lots of different reasons for that as to why the numbers aren't improving. But, first and foremost, understanding that need for diversity at the table is so important because ultimately it drives better business results and outcomes. Having that diverse perspective around the table, and that diversity, no matter what color, what sex, whatever the case may be, varying backgrounds, just diversity in a broad sense brings different perspectives and ideas to the table that ultimately drives better business results. So I think it's important that we state that up front. So what's happening? Why are we losing women to the workforce? Well, sadly, during the pandemic, we've actually taken many steps backwards because we lost 4 times as many women in the workplace as it was to men. Mainly because as women, many of us take on multiple roles of being the caretaker, those of us that still have small children, and making sure that our families are taken care of. So, that is work that we need to do to ensure that we have flexible work policies and HR policies that get our women back into the workforce. But even prior to that, I would say, the pipeline starts back in middle school. Like we got to go all the way back, unfortunately. Yeah. And we got to attract our young girls, and those of us that had girls in middle school or in high school. It starts in middle school where peer pressure becomes very strong. We need to encourage our girls to take robotics, to take math, to enjoy the sciences, and encourage them to continue with that in high school so that they're prepared when they enter college to enter into these various STEM curriculums and degrees. So that's first and foremost what we must do. And to do that, there needs to be programs that help our young girls and encourage them to do that. But also there needs to be role models where they can see women in these technology leadership positions. And, I'll take my own daughter who now is graduating high school, but as a middle schooler, she thought being in technology meant I was sitting in a dark room, not talking to anyone, coding all day. Not very exciting for many of our young girls. So how we introduce technology and teach technology to our young girls to get them interested and frankly captivated and inspired about how technology actually changes the world and can make the world a better place is how we grab have their attention, and then keep them as they're entering to college. All of us as women, certainly I feel it's my responsibility to reach back and pull as many women forward. But we as women also need to push ourselves forward, right? So we all have a tendency, and we learned this if you read the book, Lean In with Sheryl Sandberg, is, I look at a job description, unless I feel comfortable with every job requirement on that description, I'm like, oh, I'm not qualified. But no offense to my male colleagues on the call. They're like, oh yeah, I can do that. And they go ahead and apply for the role. So you have to take risk. When you take those risks is where you have certainly the greatest learning and the greatest rewards that come from that. So those are things, and and then I'll kind of move into the last part of your question, Carol, of over my career, where frankly, I've worked in male-dominated environments my entire career, where I was the only woman in the room, starting as an undergraduate at Syracuse as a computer engineering major, one of a couple women in my class. No, I'm not going to tell you what year that was, because you'll all be doing the math in your head. But in Department of Defense, into academia, into high tech, even at Intel a few years back, I'm looking around the room at a meeting at a financial partner in New York City, and I'm sitting at the table with 40 guys at the conference table. Not okay. What is so empowering about healthcare is that I do see more women in the executive ranks and leadership ranks in healthcare, and I'm really proud of what we're doing at Blue Shield of California, where not only do we have a zero pay gap, but we have 50% representation at the executive leadership ranks, 50% representation at our board, and a board chair for the first time in history that is female.
Fantastic. Fantastic. There's so much that you said that I would love to comment on. I'm like, I know I have so many things to respond to on that, but as it relates to being a mentor and encouraging women in tech very early on, letting them see the work that you do or that we're doing. And I'll speak to everybody on the call. So our trainers at home, all of our associates, people that have been with us current. I think one of the things that's really interesting about COVID is that we have been working at home. And, for me, my children have been able to watch me, and for you and other people, even family members, hearing and seeing and watching what it is that we do. And just getting a really unique opportunity to understand in ways, or hear you even on the calls, how you answer questions, how you talk with people, just things that they never would have really had an opportunity to do. So it's exciting. There was some good that came from this as it relates to just building up the next generation of people and helping people understand what it means to be in any occupation, tech, HR, any of the things that we do. Absolutely. So,
yeah, and I think it's a great point, Carol. I was kind of chuckling to myself because I was thinking you must still have young kids that are enamored by what mom says. When you have teenagers, like I do, they're like, really, mom? You're a little loud, and could you turn it down a little bit?
That is so fun. Yeah, they definitely listen. They thought prior to now that my job, like I just played on the computer, and for them, that was like a dream job. Why would you not want to spend your days on the computer? It's like, it's very different. It's very different, but it's a fun, time for them to see what that is all about. And about being the first, I mean, my hat is off to you in every way possible. That is not a position I think that many people would necessarily say that they would want to be in. But even in that, there's so much opportunity, as scary as it can be, for you to be the first. And, I will say, on a very smaller scale, I can relate, I joined Revature 5 years ago, and I won't say I was the very first female in leadership, but I was one of the first. And at this point, I would say almost half of our team, 40% of our executive leadership team is female. Mm-hmm. So our HR team, our legal team, our head of recruitment, our marketing, we've got a very strong female presence, and it's wonderful to just see that, to see representation. Starting
congratulations.
To so it's fantastic. It really is. But, for you to be the first and, how did you do that? I guess that was the next question is, there are many, and it isn't just a question just for women. There will be times where, anybody will be the first, so you're in that room, either you're, the first time that you're in that role, or, you're a first generation person leaving a home city for the first time, and you're the first person in your family that did that, or a new idea, or, you're a leader and you're doing something that's never been done before. So looking back at your career, you've done that. You have stuck your neck out. You've taken those risks. You've done that thing that nobody has done before. So I was curious about how did you do, if that secret inside, if there was a secret, how did you gain the respect, or how did you have that confidence to really do that thing for the first time?
I want to say, and I get asked this question a lot, and it's a really important question because, first of all, it comes with self-confidence, right? Self-confidence is what you think about yourself, and self-esteem is what you think others think of you. So building your self-confidence, you have to do that with purposeful self-talk, right? Focus on your strengths and your achievements, and you got to let the baggage and the rest of it go. But how do you do that? I think you do that and you get confident by really knowing your craft, really getting good at what you do. And when you're good at what you do, people will respect you for not only what you know, but what you do and how you ultimately deliver results. So I want to be clear that you can be the smartest person in the room. One, if you're a jerk, nobody's going to want to partner with you. So it's really important, right, that you are able to collaborate. Two, you got to be able to communicate what it is you do know and how that is going to tie to a business outcome or mission outcome, right? And how do you get good at that? You get good at that by practicing. But third, at the end of the day, no matter how smart you are, no matter how fantastic your strategy is, and what your theory or what your proposal or what your implementation plan might be, you got to be able to execute and deliver results. That is what matters. Not only what you do, but how you do it. So when we think about technology, I can be the smartest engineer, but if I can't communicate and translate that technology and knowledge so that my business partners can understand how to leverage it and how to partner with you, it's going to be very difficult for you to be successful. So I want to call out the soft skills, right? Some of these skills that I've been talking about, as when you asked me, how did you do it? Well, communication, collaboration, partnership, right? Those verbal and written skills, all of those soft skills that they don't necessarily teach us when we go to school, but what becomes so important in the business world, certainly in the engineering and many of the STEM curriculums. So I think that is first and foremost how you build your confidence and how you get really good at what you do and ultimately deliver results. And we know, Carol, that the more you do it, the easier it becomes. I recently had an employee ask me, I was doing a keynote, and they said, oh, Lisa, how do you get up on stage and how do you do this keynote? I would be terrified. And I said to them, I practice. And they said, what do you mean you practice? And they were just shocked that I actually practice. I said, I sit at home and I'm practicing my speaking notes in the mirror, making sure I know the material, I know how to discuss the material, address questions. And of course, the more confident I am on the material, the more confident I am in delivery of that material, right? But it takes practice. And then I would say, it's funny, I always say, dress the part, right? You dress the part of the job that you ultimately want to be. Mm-hmm. And it's kind of gotten a little interesting on Zoom calls in terms of what that might be. But what's important, it's not just what you wear, but how it makes you project yourself, right? And all of us can relate to, when you feel good about yourself, others are going to feel that confidence. Right? In terms of how you're showing up and how you're delivering and how you're participating in the dialogue or the conversations that we're having. And then I think the final thing I would recommend, and for us as women, is word choice is key. Mm. Women will say, we believe, where men will say, I think. Women will attribute to a team, and many times we is the appropriate pronoun, but you got to get comfortable saying I sometimes. And of course, give kudos to the team when it's a team effort, but not being timid in how you show up, and take the seat at the table versus the seat around the side of the room.
That is excellent advice. And so helpful. And it definitely is a practice. It's practice. It's the more that you do it, the more comfortable you get. I know that is very challenging. And I remember, at the beginning of my career too, how do you do that at the beginning when you haven't really had an opportunity to practice? But I think that's where working on teams where you are with other people that are supportive of you, who know the journey that you're on, or just believe in you and give you that opportunity to show what you know and value some of those soft skills that you were talking about too. So in particular in tech, and I would say any industry, a lot of it is practice. So you're going to make mistakes, but having those other pieces of you, just help build your career. And I like what you're saying too. So we had this topic, we had this conversation internally. The concept was, it's kind of a meaty concept, but it was how mindfulness of your competence can fuel your confidence. So we really had to think about it. Like, what does that mean? And I thought it's true. It's, when you take a moment to just kind of ask yourself why you're in that room, or, am I here because somebody needed somebody who looked like me to be here? You might have that moment of, do I really belong here? But when you stop and you ask yourself what you really can do and what your real competencies are and what you really know you can do, that helps kind of turn that around and helps build your confidence. And then I won't say the rest is history, because it continues to need work and practice, but it's a great stepping stone for your career.
Yeah, absolutely. It can be very difficult, certainly on Zoom calls, to get a word in edgewise, especially if you're in a large group setting. I mean, Zoom calls can be very challenging for even the most seasoned executive or individual to participate. And many times establishing that protocol of having a facilitator in the meeting, using the raise your hand feature of something that you want to share helps. And it's something you can recommend to your leader or the facilitator of that meeting. Anytime you get more than, oh my goodness, 6 people, 5 people in a Zoom call, it's very difficult sometimes to get a word in edgewise. And when we're back in person and you're sitting in those meetings, and we've all been there. So I think, first of all, we always think it's only me. I'm the only one feeling this way. Mm-hmm. And sometimes realizing that you're not the only one can be comforting, because the fact is everybody's feeling that way for the most part. Mm-hmm. And working with your supervisor or someone else on the team, if it's hard for you to get a word in edgewise, to say, Carol, is there anything that you'd like to add And one of the tips that I like to do as I'm managing a large group is many folks, and everybody's different. You know, you have your extroverts, you have your introverts, people that have to process and don't like being thrown a question where they have to respond right away. So many times a great technique is to say, hey, Carol, I'm going to come back to you after I finish this point to address the following question, to give you an opportunity to think and prepare kind of your comments so that you're ready to participate and provide some comment in that meeting. So there's little tips that you can leverage when you're sitting there saying, I know I should say something. I know I have something to say. I should say something. How am I going to get my voice heard and speak out? And the first time will probably be terrifying. The second and the third time, it will get easier.
That's great advice. And I think the point of that too, the takeaway for me is that it can be on both sides. So as a manager, knowing your audience and knowing that, you know, our responsibility is to make sure that everybody is heard, and on, you know, as I would say, as an employee on my side, to raise my hand if I'm having difficulty doing that. So if I'm saying, I know that I'm having that feeling, I really want to participate more, but I feel like I don't know how to get my voice in, to kind of take that responsibility to have that conversation with your manager or somebody to get that advice, and not just to accept that that's the feeling, because we want participation. We all benefit from that participation, and we want that. We want the diversity of thought. We want the diversity of everything. So, you know, not to take that opportunity to participate. And you're right, that can be something maybe not unique to women, but maybe more women may feel that than men, you know, on the whole. I'm not sure. But so that's a great springboard into the diversity topic. And so you did hit on it at the beginning, but you know, as we're talking about women in tech, and again, this is not specific just to women, but diversity in general, you know, Blue Shield of California has been very big, and you have been such a thought leader on diversity in general, the importance of diversity, and working to increase diversity in your workforce. So I just wanted to talk to you about what, you know, why that is, why diversity is so important for Blue Shield of California, and what the real tangible, measurable impact or benefit is in building out that program, and maybe some of the things that you're doing in support of that.
No, you know, thank you. At Blue Shield of California, we certainly recognize the benefit of attracting, developing, and retaining a diverse workforce. And we've been recognized for that with numerous industry awards. We have several diversity, equity, inclusion groups. I myself is the executive sponsor of the Elevating Women group. I'm proud to say, at the company. But, you know, as I mentioned earlier, why is diversity so important? It's because that diversity of perspective ultimately drives innovation and drives better business results. And those voices around the table, with those diverse voices, are critically important to, you know, ultimately resemble what the market resembles. And if we take a look at the market today, you know, women control, this is a crazy statistic, 51% of US wealth, and either directly make or influence up to 80% of all purchases. Okay, so this is powerful. That's why Bloomberg reports that companies with gender balanced teams have a higher return on equity, right? So if we are the market, at least half, and we certainly drive the buying power. If you just think about it from a pure supply chain and market standpoint, we want that diversity and certainly women's voices at the table when we're designing products, designing services, because that's the market that is going to be purchasing your product or capability at the end of the day. So your team should resemble the population that you are serving. I remember a funny story, and I'm going to take the names out to protect the innocent, but at a previous high-tech company that I worked, we were designing something for the Apple Watch in which you would charge and store your Apple Watch. And the funniest thing is the entire design team was men. And when the product, after a prototype of the product, and it was brought to a broader market audience with women in the audience, they were like, we would never do that as women in terms of how we would charge, because most of us take our watch off or we put our rings or something in a little bowl, right? In terms of how we are with our jewelry. But it's just a really easy example of the bias that gets built in when you don't have a diverse perspective at the design table. And what really becomes concerning is when we think about artificial intelligence, data and analytics, the algorithms that we're building. Oh my goodness, if I have only one type of person that are building those algorithms, there is an innate bias that is built in to what that algorithm will do. That's not sufficient. And it doesn't meet the needs, certainly, of all of us as consumers. So, I mean, the question of diversity, that's been solved a while, and now we just need to do a better job of building pipelines, continuing to drive diversity in leadership, diversity in our teams, so that we get those perspectives at the table.
That's perfect. That's perfect. Number one, I just want to comment on the AI aspect of things. That's a topic that I'm really interested in. And I think if we're trying to get more women or just people in general excited about coming into tech and want them to understand the purpose and the impact that they can have by bringing diverse perspectives in, AI is a tech that stands out to me as a place where there's just so much opportunity. But just transitioning into the tech talent strategies and the pipeline in general, we know that it's very important for Blue Shield of California and firms in general to create a sustainable supply of diverse tech talent. You have done so much work at Blue Shield of California to turn around and transform your IT operations in general. I was very interested to hear more from what you're doing to build that sustainable supply. And then, a second part of that is, what are you looking for in talent as you're bringing new people into your organization?
Yeah, we've been doing quite a bit, and it's really kind of a multi-pronged strategy around our talent and what we would call a human capital strategy, right? At the end of the day, people are the most important asset that we have in terms of what and how we are delivering on transforming healthcare. So first of that is, really mapping out, understanding the current capabilities that we had within the workforce, and then mapping that to meet our future state needs. So if we want to unleash and create a digital health ecosystem, we obviously know we need the skills of the future in order to do that. So one, it's upskilling current talent. And that means, and if you're in the field of technology, if you were previously a system administrator, a database administrator, a network administrator, how do those roles morph as you move into a cloud infrastructure or infrastructure as a service? What are the new roles around data and analytics, not just from a day-to-day operational standpoint, but how do we move into self-service? How do we move into leveraging artificial intelligence and machine learning? So it's upskilling the talent that we have, but it's also infusing new talent with these current market skills. And I'm a firm believer of teach us how to fish, right? So it's upskilling the people that certainly want to be part of the journey and are excited about where we're going. And that's a lot of change. So, that's a choice of what it is I want to do. And then it's infusing talent with those future skill sets. And it also requires us to think differently about how we hire and where we hire. This is one of the things I'm so excited about our partnership with Revature in terms of really introducing Blue Shield of California and bringing in talent and infusing that talent with current skill sets into the organization and helping them to learn healthcare and how to apply those technology skills in order to have an impact on transforming and moving to a digital health ecosystem. So we're looking at different models of hiring. Of course, we use contractor and vendor support. We're trying to reduce our dependence on vendors and inherently grow the skill sets, certainly where those skill sets are a differentiator in terms of what they bring to Blue Shield of California. And we're also very much pushing from a diverse standpoint. So do you have a diverse panel that's doing the hiring? Do you have a diverse slate of candidates that are being interviewed for the roles? And we have hired 150 people into the organization, as well as my entire leadership team over the last 15 months during the pandemic. So all of these folks have come into the organization in a virtual ramp. So it's certainly a multi-pronged approach. And in terms of what are the skill sets we're looking for, these should be no surprise. Cloud computing, healthcare has been a laggard in digital transformation. So we're just really moving from an on-premise infrastructure into cloud and moving our data infrastructure into the cloud as well. So skill sets in data scientists, data engineers, folks that have a knowledge of medical informatics. Data science is huge in terms of skill sets, infrastructure, new skill sets around cloud and how we maintain and sustain our infrastructure in the cloud. Will ultimately be a hybrid multi-cloud environment. So we'll have workloads or applications that sit in the cloud, and we'll still have workloads or applications that sit on-prem. So those skill sets are the skill sets of today. They're not necessarily new in terms of which we're hiring and trying to recruit into Blue Shield of California.
Wonderful. Whew. Okay. I know one of the things that you talked about as well when you were, took over at Blue Shield of California, and the ability for talent to be, kind of the soft skill that we had talked about earlier, that lifelong learning, the adaptability and the agility. And something that you had commented on was just, how fast technology is changing and how your needs are changing so quickly. And so, to keep the mindset of knowing, to come in, knowing what you know, but also being able, willing, and excited about learning something new, and partnering with the company to solve business problems and business challenges. So not thinking of ourselves just as technologists, but really thinking of ourselves as problem solvers, and really getting into the business and knowing how we can really solve problems together was a mindset that I had heard you talk about on a separate webinar. And I really thought that aligned nicely to Revature values and something that we look for in our talent at the beginning when people are really just starting their careers.
It's a really important point you called out, Carol, because all of us, first of all, if you're in technology, then you've entered a discipline that is continually evolving and changing, and staying current in your skill set is absolutely critical. Beyond that, and even taking a step back and thinking broader, having that growth mindset, being curious, wanting to continually learning and growing. I mean, even after my 30 years in technology, I'm continually learning and growing. And part of the reason why I came to healthcare, because there was so much that needed to be done. And frankly, so much that I needed to learn in terms of how I could apply my knowledge and experience to helping create a digital health ecosystem. We all should be thinking that way of being curious and being flexible and continuing to grow and learn and get really good at not only the technology piece, but the business piece, right? So I've always thought about development, kind of in a triangle as you continue to grow and learn in your careers. You have your technical acumen, which continues to need to be fed. You have your business acumen in the business that you are. And another piece of that when it comes to really understanding the business is the financial acumen. right? Because, you know, this is a constant conversation, you know, at any company that you're in, of how do I leverage technology? How do I work within a funding envelope? What is the funding or the ROI that I'm going to get out by moving something to digital or automating a capability or leveraging AI and analytics? So, you know, it's kind of this triangle of skill sets that you'll continue to grow and should continue to develop on. And when you have a breadth of knowledge across that triangle, then you're really marketable in terms of what you can offer and what you bring to the table.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I think that we've covered most of our questions for today. So before we switch into our Q&A section, I just wanted to offer Lisa, you the opportunity, if there was anything else that you wanted to hit on, or any advice or anything that we want to touch on before we switch into our taking questions from participants.
No, I think we've hit on the main topics. I think we'll need more time for Q&A.
Okay.
Well, I gotta say, Lisa, those were extraordinary perspectives, both strategic and practical. And I think there's so much here that can be applied to our own program, to be frank. And we are so honored to be a partner of Blue California. And I wanted to just give folks the perspective on the call that we have a cohort of 8 folks that are there now. And so we've been a part of that 150, and we're very gratified to be a part of it. And we've got a lot more open roles that we're collaborating around. And and the folks that the folks that are deployed at Blue California, who we have regular contact with, are just so thrilled to be there. They're absolutely motivated. They are excited to come to work every day. And interesting. And this is very difficult for institutions to do. And I've seen it in my previous life. Their hiring managers have been tremendous in terms of not only their leadership, but their mentorship. And so all the things that you've been talking about, I will say that, you know, Blue California walks the walk.
Well, thank you. Thank you for that, Bob. When we bring new talent into the organization, you know, I remember when I was a high school or college intern, and I was working at federal government, Department of Defense. Those experiences that you have when you first come out of school and you enter the workforce, they stay with you. And I take those experiences very seriously. You know, my own son, who's a sophomore at University of Portland in engineering, electrical engineering, you know, he's doing an internship, and I talk to him all the time. How's it going? What are you learning? Who's engaged with you? So I'm really excited to hear that our hiring managers and the folks at Blue Shield, I know we're always thrilled to have talent come into the organization and really provide that mentorship and guidance. You know, healthcare is a complicated business. I mean, it's just, it is. And there is a tremendous amount to learn. There's so much that you can take from that learning opportunity and apply it to really whatever sector you wind up working in.
Yep, absolutely. That triangle that you described, is the Holy Grail. Yeah. I mean, when you really think about it, it's the Holy Grail. And I think if I were to emphasize one thing that came out of this call for me, in fact, I was taking notes. It was that. So I don't want to get in the way of Q&A, and I'm going to step out and mute myself now.
Okay, thanks, Bob.
Oh, that was perfect. I was just looking over to see, we've got a couple of questions that have come in here. So I'm in no particular order. One of the questions we got was, as a male developer, how can I better understand the perspective of female developers? For example, are there any things that male developers misunderstand about female developers that can be addressed? I know, that's a big one.
That's a great question. I mean, first of all, I think it's communication.
Sure.
If you're developing, you know, and we think about agile, right? So we are moving into agile methodologies, and, you know, Amazon is famous for the 2 pizza teams, but we've created portfolio product teams, which are customer facing teams engaged with our business partners. So they're small teams. They have solution architects, security personnel, data architects and engineers, And the purpose of a portfolio product model is to, one, for IT folks, is to build business acumen. And what requires in order to do that is, first, you got to establish trust with the business, but you got to establish trust amongst the IT teams as well. So, you know, it's not uncommon, and this is sad, that even in IT organizations, we tend to work in silos. Yeah. Right? Infrastructure stays in a silo compared to cyber, compared to application development work, right? In terms of how you're structured. You got to reach across the aisle and you got to break down those silos. And I always say in technology, there is not one organization in technology that can be successful on their own. Mm-hmm. We are all interdependent. So we all need to break down the silos and we need to open the communication. So, you know, to answer your question directly, if I'm on a development team and it's all men, all guys on that development team, the first question I would say is why? And get some women integrated into the product team. Second of all, if there are women, they're there. This is where this collaboration and communication comes in. And hopefully we're not developing in a silo in terms of how we're doing our work. But if I'm working in an agile and I'm in a scrum team, that communication dialogue should be occurring of ultimately how I'm delivering in those sprints or requirements to deliver to the business. So reach out, ask the question, ask for their input in terms of the development teams. This would be my recommendation. And certainly encourage diversity if it doesn't exist in the development team you're working in.
Wonderful. It's simple enough. Communication. It's interesting how many issues and problems just go back to just communication. And so that's great advice. Let's see here. So we've got another question. It is, in the tech industry, is it a problem in the long term if English is not my first language?
I don't think so, but you do need to be able to communicate. So if English is not your first language, that's okay. As long as you can communicate and deliver and translate the technology so that your partners understand it, you'll be fine. So I encourage you to, if you struggle with the English language and speaking to that, and your company is primarily English-based, then there's lots of coaching and development and training that you could do, because you're only going to get more confident by working on that skill and continuing to develop that skill set.
Absolutely. I think that goes back to, you know, the initial comment that you made on communication, and then, you know, that kind of that two-way street. So as a manager, being on the lookout for any employees that may be having any types of issues that we can help with. And as an employee, also just taking the responsibility to raise that up, being comfortable enough to discuss with managers if you can, and if not managers, your HR team's here too to help make those resources available for people. So excellent. So we've got one more question here. So in today's current environment, what do you think the typical growth path looks like for individuals starting their tech career? Typical career path. That's a I know.
I would say it's probably never linear. And here are some kind of guidelines that I've applied for myself when I think about new opportunities, right? Because if you think about, first of all, the only person that is going to care more about your career, no one is going to care more about your career than you. So you have to take ownership and charge of that, and you have to chart that out. So for example, and I'll use myself, I'm always thinking, no matter what role I'm in, what's next? Mm-hmm. What is that next growth opportunity? Am I continuing to grow? So when those opportunities are presented to you, right? And by the way, they're never presented at the most opportune times.
Yes.
They're always at the most inopportune times in your career. One, you got to be willing to move where the opportunities are, right? In order for me to take the job with Intel, I had to pick up and move my family from East Coast to West Coast, right? These are family decisions, ultimately. When you're single and you're out of school, you can make these decisions. Move to where the opportunities are and take risk. How do I evaluate opportunities? I think you got to ask yourself several questions. One, am I learning a new skill? Am I learning a new skill at which I will be growing and expanding my own portfolio in terms of my own knowledge of my particular trade craft, whether that's engineering, computer science, data engineering, whatever it may be. So am I learning something new? Am I supporting and learning, for example, in a new ecosystem, like moving from high tech into healthcare? So I start to augment my own portfolio in terms of my knowledge and experience in working in various sectors. Are you supervising more people? Are you beginning to move from an individual contributor into a leadership or management role, right? Many times you can do this within the same company if the company is large enough, but many times it may require you to move to a different company, right? Am I expanding my scope and scale in the job I'm doing? Maybe you're doing the same role, but the role is now broader in scope from an enterprise standpoint, so it's bigger. So if you start evaluating those opportunities, and each opportunity that's presented, is it a step? Maybe it's not a step up, it's a step lateral, but you answered or checked one of those other boxes that I talked about. Those are the criteria that I set for myself that have worked really well in terms of continuing to grow and, more importantly, broaden and develop my experience and my skills in my career.
That's excellent advice. And I'm so happy for all of us to be able to benefit from that experience. One of the things that you touched on there was, even in your current role, if your experience is expanding and your scope is expanding, that even that is growth. I think sometimes in my experience, people are focused on wanting that next title or that next promotion up, which is wonderful. And I understand why that's needed, but often that growth can happen even in the same level. You really gain a lot of experience and you kind of do before that promotion comes sometimes. And I see sometimes people getting stuck on that concept of, I need that promotion, I need that new title, and that growth is happening.
Title doesn't mean growth. Titles can be, frankly, mean nothing, right? And Intel's a great example of a company where, as an engineer, you could be working as an engineer in the memory business, and then you move into the data center business, or you move into the sales business and bring your technical knowledge into sales, or you move into the PC business. So, that's an example within a company that even though I may not moving up, getting a different title, right? I'm broadening my acumen in terms of the skills and the knowledge that I have. And I think at the end of the day, as a hiring manager, that is the growth that I'm looking for. Absolutely. Not necessarily the title, but the growth in terms of the scope and the responsibilities you had in the role that you do. And I think the other thing that's really important, certainly for many that are coming right out of school, you don't have to have it all figured out.
That's great
advice,
right?
Too. I have, my own kids are that age, and they're like, I gotta have it all figured out. No, you don't. Go experiment. Go do something that you're not sure about. Go learn something new. You're going to be working for the rest of your life, as I'd say, unless you win the lottery. But so do something that you're passionate about, and at the end of the day, you love to do. And the only way you're going to figure that out is by having that exploration, and frankly, by taking some risk.
Absolutely. You just have to be willing to jump in and try sometimes, and not being afraid to fail, and and also to view.
Well, we're all going to fail.
We're going to fail. It's going to happen.
Fail, and it's
going to
okay.
happen. Yeah.
It's okay. You pick yourself up and you go do something else.
Yeah. And you learn something from it.
You learn something. You learn something from that. So hopefully those are helpful tips that you can apply as you navigate your own careers.
I absolutely think so. I know we're getting close on time. I have one more question to ask, if we're still okay on time. Okay. I think you hit on this one before, but we'll give you maybe an opportunity just to make sure we've got it. But as a business leader, what soft skills do you feel best correlate with high potential and high performing employees?
Yeah, I hit on this a little bit before. Soft skills are so important. I cannot, if I had to underline something, it would be soft skills. And they're not easy for many technologists. I think it's important to find a technologist that can communicate, collaborate, build partnerships and relationships, and apply the technology to solving business problems. You can be the smartest engineer in the room, but if you can't talk to a customer, if you can't talk to the business, there may be a role for you to play in the back room. Let's be real, right? That is a role. But at the end of the day, depending on what your career goals are, if you want to eventually be a leader and move into the executive ranks, and we all have different goals, you're going to have to speak to customers, and you're going to have to speak to the business. And being able to translate technology into business and understanding business problems and driving business results is really what's critically important. And I'm hiring those skills today in portfolio leaders. Everybody has technology skills, but can they talk to the business? Can they build trust and partnership with the business to establish those relationships that are so critical in order to work and solve problems together is really where the rubber hits the road.
Absolutely. And that's great to hear from you as well in terms of, the types of training or leadership development, the types of tools that we can make available to Revature employees, and the types of things that will really be an investment in our talent that will end up being an investment in your talent. So that's a great place for us to focus. I think that gets us to the end of all of the questions that we received from the audience.
Great.
Yeah, I think we're coming to an end here as well, time-wise. For the rest of the participants here on the call, if there are any other questions, I'm still welcoming people to submit them in chat, and then maybe we can pass them along either to Lisa to comment on after the fact, or we can find a way to connect. But I think that brings us to the end of the hour. I just want to thank you again sincerely for spending so much time with us today and sharing these truly innovative your point of view and your experience. You bring a really unique and inspirational point of view as a leading woman in technology. So I hope everybody enjoyed today's event. And I'd like to say thank you again so much for being here.
You're welcome, Carol. It was my pleasure to be here. And I hope the folks took a golden nugget somewhere and can apply that. And it's been my pleasure. I'm so excited about the partnership that we have with Revature. Keep the candidates coming. We want more. We're still hiring, and we still have tremendous opportunity, tremendous work to do. So thank you so much for being a great partner.
You too. Thank you so much as well.